What's up, family? It's Carlos here. I am one of our Central Youth Directors, and this month we're talking about a spiritual discipline that is super different than what culture tells us. So I hope you're ready to be challenged a little bit. Okay, we're talking about generosity. Now, you might be on some hold up. Culture doesn't say we shouldn't be generous. And you know what? You're almost right. See, culture doesn't exactly tell us in those words. But what culture does tell us is to chase after more money, more things, more stuff. And if you read your Bible, you'll see that it's very clear. The Bible warns us against doing these things because it's against the heart of generosity. So let's unpack this, okay? Check out what 1 Timothy 6:18 says. It says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Be rich in good deeds. Be generous and willing to share. Not stuff culture tells us, right? Culture tells us to get more, and the Bible tells us to share. I also want you to notice the verse doesn't even say to be generous and willing to share your money. It just says generous and willing to share. Why? Because generosity isn't just about money. It's about your mentality. It's about your heart posture. A decision that you're going to be open-handed as a person. And that brings us to our key for this week. You ready? Write it down. Everyone has something to give. It's just a matter of whether they have the discipline to give it. Now, I could mic drop, walk off, and leave it right there, and that would be plenty for us to chew on. But let's just go even a little bit deeper. See, first off, if we're going to talk about generosity, there is no way we can have the conversation without talking about Jesus. I mean, really think about it. He gave us his life in the most generous, selfless act ever. But what are some other ways he was generous? Okay, he spent time with those who were hurting and lonely. There's another time where he washed his disciples' feet. He shared his healing power with people who were injured or disabled. See, nothing here about him giving away money. That's because giving money is only one way to be generous. It's much more about sharing whatever you do have with those who need it. Problem is, no one, not you, not me, nobody is born generous. That's the thing. See, selfishness is in our DNA. That's why it's so easy for us to walk around thinking, I don't have enough. That's why it's so easy to feel like we don't have a lot to give. But you do. Listen to me, you do. We all do. The question is just if we have the discipline to be generous and give what we have. So let me leave you with one quick story, okay? Bible talks about this in Luke chapter 10. Jesus tells us about a man who was lying on the side of the road. He was injured. He just got beaten and robbed. Several people walked past him, leaving him right there until the Good Samaritan came by. First, the Good Samaritan stopped. He gave his time. Then, he bandaged the man's wounds. He gave him the skill. And last, he took him to an inn, and he gave the innkeeper money to continue to look after the man while he was getting healed. The Good Samaritan gave his resources. See, this is what generosity looks like. It's working with what you do have, giving what you've got. So it's time to start thinking, how can you be generous? This month, we decided to do something a little bit different. We thought, what better way than to lead with generosity than to do it ourselves? So we went out and showed you practical ways on how you can be generous. Take a look.
I don't know if people actually know what we're about to do. Should we tell them?
We thought we would give you guys an example of something you could do any day. You could do it with your parents. You could do it with your friends. And we're going to be going to a couple of local restaurants.
Yes.
And we're just going to bless some people. We're going to pay for the person's meal behind us. I mean, we're really not even going to see, because it's not really about us getting the credit. It's just about the investment of generosity. So I can't wait. Why do you think people only think generosity is money, David? Do you think it's like because we see that on YouTube?
I'll tell you why I always start there.
Yeah.
It's because everything that I think I don't have in life, I think I can buy.
Oh.
Right? And without money, you can't really buy anything. People think like, oh, like in order to be generous, I have to give something elaborate or extravagant.
Yes.
as a TV.
But I think it's so good with your desires. I think sometimes if we don't feel like we have enough, we don't think we can give enough.
Ooh.
But that's the key. I think one of the keys of generosity is
That's
moving
so
our
good.
perspective beyond ourselves.
I have a question for you though.
Then I have a question for you.
What do you think has been one of the best gifts that you've given to someone?
I have a good friend from like back in the day. They called me out of the blue and they're going through some really rough personal stuff. The greatest gift, they're not asking me for my money. They're not asking me to solve their problems, but just picking up the phone and being present.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder how even in middle school and high school, we walk by people who we can tell are having a bad day. And how many of us have ever stopped to just be generous with our time and our presence? David just was not generous in traffic.
Cut them off.
No, but that's because they don't know. But I'm gonna pay for their coffee.
We just cut them off, but we're about to fill them up,
I
okay?
know.
This is just a simple practice of generosity. You can be generous at home, you can be generous with your parents. Do the dishes for your parents one time. Such generosity.
Right.
Unless it's one of your
No,
chores,
I
that's not
should've paid for
generosity,
the
it's just
car
called doing what you're
That's
told.
it's like
But this is something anyone can do.
anybody can do it.
Just paying for one person Starbucks drink.
Less than $10, we've just made their day. Look, she doesn't even know. I love
She's
this.
in the
It's like,
minivan.
you know, he's got a big old yawn.
That's 2 people, 2 cars.
2 cars. You just gotta start somewhere. Don't
Yeah.
overcomplicate it. And I think that's why we're here today. We're like,
Yep.
we're not gonna do some elaborate thing.
Yeah.
Let's just start somewhere.
Yeah.
So we want you guys to just start
Thank you so
somewhere.
much, Riley.
Like somewhere.
You have a good day.
Yep.
Okay, on to the next one.
Let's
Yeah.
What should we do
go.
next?
This is a good time to poll the youth ministry as to what the greatest fast food restaurants really are.
Oh,
We know we have a vote for McDonald's in the front.
100%.
We have a vote for McDonald's.
100%.
Come
Best
on.
fries in the world, McDonald's. Best Sprite in the world. The Sprite quenches your thirst. The thirst you didn't even know you have.
Yeah.
And then can I get a medium Fanta light ice?
David, did you just order a Fanta after you talked about how good their Sprite was?
I know, it's psychotic, isn't it?
You got me on the extra Fanta orange.
Yes, that's me. And then can I pay for the 2 cars behind me as well, please?
You gonna pay for the 2 car behind?
Yes, please. The people are so upset. They're like, why is he taking so long?
You want me to say something to all of them?
You can just tell them to have a blessed day.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So that is it from us. We just came back from doing one of my favorite things that
Yes.
I probably have done all day.
Order
and that was
McDonald's.
just, 1,000% for me.
Yeah.
But we got to just, bless it forward by paying for,
Yeah.
the people behind us.
Yeah.
We bought people some coffee.
Yeah.
Bought people some McDonald's
Yeah.
cheeseburgers,
Yeah.
the best burgers in the world. And we think that you could do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always say we don't go out and do random acts of kindness. Do intentional acts of kindness. And in the next couple of weeks, do some drive-through generosity.
Yep.
Okay? If there's someone behind you, just bless it on back. Okay? Pay for the person behind you, and then just keep on going. You don't have any idea what that can mean to that
Yeah.
person when you practice generosity.
You got it, because God's got you.
That's right.
What's up, Elevation Youth? I'm so excited to share with you today a little bit more about generosity. My name is David and I am our NextGen worship and creative pastor. But let's jump right in. Okay, so last week we talked about generosity on the level of giving what you have, working with what you've got. And we learned that generosity is about so much more than money. This week, we're gonna dig right into the money side of it, because the Bible does give us clear instructions on what we should do with the bread in our pocket. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out our podcast with Pastor Tim Ross. Okay, let's start with Matthew 6 first, just to get an idea of what Jesus thought about money. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus says, "No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." In other words, Jesus knew that money can compete against God for our hearts. This is where we've got to ask ourselves a serious question. Are we serving money? Because Jesus made it super clear that we can't serve money and God at the same time. So then how can we know if we're serving money? How about this? Let's throw back to what we learned last month about worship. Do you remember that amazing quote from Pastor Steven? Worship is my mind's attention and my heart's affection on what God has for me. So does money have your mind's attention and your heart's affection? Are you constantly thinking about how much you don't have or what you don't have enough of? It's important to ask ourselves this because culture is training us to make money our master. The Bible even gives us a perfectly clear example of what this looks like in both Matthew and in Luke. A young man asked Jesus what he needed to do in order to get into heaven. Let's look at the end of their conversation together. You still lack one thing. Sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. When he heard this, he became very sad because he was very wealthy. Jesus looked at him and said, how hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God. Indeed, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. Jesus is making a point here that someone who is rich, someone who has pursued wealth for the sake of being wealthy, has done so instead of seeking God. I know, it's heavy stuff, but we can't overlook this. If Jesus warns us about something, we'd better sit up and pay attention. Did you know that Jesus mentions money in the Bible more times than he mentions heaven and hell? So what do? Culture is telling us to do one thing, and Jesus is warning us not to. How do we let go of this desire for money? Let's go ahead and write something down, okay? It takes discipline to loosen your grip on your stuff and trust God with your story. Yep, there's that word again, discipline, right? But this is absolutely true because it takes discipline, because greed is the sin that nobody likes to admit that they struggle with. But we all struggle with it because we're all constantly bombarded with a million commercials during the Super Bowl or ads when we scroll past TikTok or Instagram. So if we're going to loosen our grip on our stuff and trust God with our story, then it's time to get radical with our money. Maybe you've heard of the word tithing, which means to give the first 10% of our money to God, which sounds like a lot, but since it's all from him, I kind of think that the 90 he lets us keep is a lot. And the Bible doesn't say we should consider tithing or that it would be nice if we tithe. No, tithing is obedience. Generosity with our money is the next step after we obey the tithe. See, that type of generosity asks God, what can I give to you above the tithe? What do you want me to do with the rest? He might encourage you to support a friend in need, or maybe bring a gift to a shelter or sponsor a kid overseas somewhere. And at first, giving money might really hurt. But after all, we're giving away what culture is telling us to keep, right? But the more you embrace being generous with your money, you'll start to understand exactly why Jesus was so careful to give us these instructions. Being generous shows God we trust him to provide for us, that we're choosing him as our master. But like anything else we've learned this semester, it takes training. So let's get out there and train ourselves, Elevation Youth. What do you need to do to train yourself to be generous with your money? Here we are, John. What are you doing?
Outreach. Hey, Elevation Outreach, elevationoutreach.com. There are outreach events happening all across literally the world. It's not easy, but it's a simple way to practice generosity.
You're so right about it not being easy, because I think generosity doesn't always come naturally.
We don't come out generous.
Talk about it. How can we become more generous? Like, what are some things that could kind of help us get to a place where we can work more into like our schedules and stuff like that?
Well, I think it's got to be more of like a habit or a discipline.
Ooh.
And here's the thing too.
People don't like hearing that word, John.
We have to think that like generosity is more like what we're doing right now, not a Mr. Beast video. Okay. No, but I think about it sometimes. I'm like, if everyone thinks that
That's a good
generosity is, I gave away $10 million in a car. They're like, I can never do that. And sometimes I think we on social media can see generosity as a form of entertainment we see others do instead of a spiritual discipline we operate in. And I think just doing simple things like packing hygiene kits for people who literally don't have access to deodorant and toothpaste and a toothbrush.
And it's so important to also know that it comes in different forms as well. Outreach, you can do outreach anywhere. You know, that could sometimes look like, you know, you're standing in line at a grocery store with your parents and maybe the people behind you, you know, like have a crying baby and you can just help them by saying, hey, you can go ahead of me.
Absolutely.
You know, that's outreach. That's helping someone.
I feel like we hear all the time of, you know, students going through a rough time, or maybe someone passes away at a school, and we see some of our students do this, and I think this is something everyone can do, is involve that student, like hang out with them or do something special for them at prom or homecoming. And I think sometimes generosity really is taking something you already do and going, okay, how can I just add someone else's perspective into it? I'm already going grocery shopping. I'm already going to be at homecoming. How can I include somebody else? There's some people who, if you at your school, I think, were like, hey, come to homecoming with us or whatever thing, or just sit at the lunch table, it could change their month, their week.
You can find ways to like help people.
Absolutely.
That doesn't always look like getting around a table and packing, hygiene kits to help
simple.
someone. It could even be just doing your chores. Helping your parents.
Going above and beyond.
Oh my God!
Hey, if you have these 3 things on your list, what if you did the 4th thing they didn't ask you to do? Generosity.
That's why you're such a good dad, because you're doing their chores.
I get to play Fortnite again as soon as they're old enough to do chores. But I have to train my mind, and this is a question I ask myself. I go, how would I like it if Jesus thought about me like I'm thinking about these people?
You stopped me dead in my tracks.
If he was stingy towards me, like some people are, like I want to be stingy towards people, I don't know where I'd be.
Wow. What's the most quoted verse in all of humanity?
John 3:16.
Yes, it took you a while to think. You were like John 11.
No, it made me think of the one
Jesus wept.
And it's football season in the States, and so all the football players have Philippians 4:13 in their bio, you know? I can do all things.
I can do all things.
I can do all
No, but
things.
you're so right. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he.
Gay.
I mean, generosity is right there.
Yeah.
And so if it's at the core of what we believe, then why would we not replicate what the Father did for us? You know what I mean?
100%.
And so like giving looks like so many different things, and being generous can look like so many different things too.
Elevation Outreach is really cool too, because it takes what we already want people to do, which is valuing the tithe, which is a form of financial stewardship. And our church gives 12% of everything that comes in automatically to this. So when a disaster happens in the world, or even a crisis on the news, anyone that's a part of Elevation knows, like, hey, we're doing something with one of the partners on the ground. And I just think generosity makes your world bigger. Like, that's what I've seen.
Bro, imagine if you already start as a teenager practicing the discipline of tithing.
Yeah.
Because people always say, oh no, I'm only gonna tithe when I've got more money. Or, God, when you give me $1 million, I promise you, Lord, I will give you $100,000.
Yeah.
Do you know how unrealistic that sounds? If you can't even give him $1 from your $10,
Absolutely.
what makes you think that you're gonna be able to willingly give away $100,000 because now you have $1 million?
And he's not looking for the amount, he's looking for the heart. What's that story about the widow's mite? She gave just the little penny she had, and she's like, that one. That one. And this guy with his bags of gold, but his heart was to be seen, not to see people.
And that's why I think outreach is such a great avenue, because you're literally giving of your time. Imagine you're like, hey, 10% of my month, I'm gonna give.
Ooh, tithe your time? Tithe?
And it works because TT, tithe your time. TYT.
Tithe your time. We always talk about time management, about us. What about managing your time for generosity, other people?
You're convicting me right here, bro.
Got the last one right here.
Time management. Are we looking at time as something that can also honor God, or are we just always just thinking about money or things?
And let's not just be doing community service because we need it for a college application. Let's just, we're missing out. We're missing out. We're missing out baptizing.
Imagine I just take some of this. What is this?
But
what's
shampoo?
Oh, I don't use shampoo. I use soap for my hair. Is that not right to do? Am I supposed to use shampoo if I just use soap? Let me know in the comments. Is it okay to use soap in your hair instead of shampoo?
Hey, this is the last one. Seriously, get connected at your campus. Outreach events are happening all this month and all year long. It's a value of our church. And we're partnering with amazing organizations. Generosity is something that you can literally be a part of.
Okay, go be generous.